Humans have been cooking for more than 500,000 years, but what were the first kitchen tools our ancestors used? What did they use before pots and pans and spatulas? In this video, we're gonna go back in time to find out what the very first kitchen tools were. Welcome to FoodSaga. Like, subscribe, and comment for more. Let's start. We all know that early humans hunted animals for food, but there was more to their diet than just eating meat. They also gathered plants, fruits and vegetables, roots and tubers, and even some grains and seeds. But how do you deal with these different types of food? Back then, the answer was simple: sharp rocks. Well, not exactly a kitchen tool. Per se, sharp rocks were likely the first technology early humans used to cut meat, slice up roots, and crush plants. These rocks are called cobbles, and they would have been extremely useful for early humans because they were easy to find and could be used over and over again. They may not have been very efficient or convenient, but they were undoubtedly effective enough to stick around. The next step up from sharp rocks would be grinding stones, which can be found at archaeological sites across the world. As far back as 2.6 million years ago, evidence of these stones has been found in Africa. So it's believed they were used by early hominins such as Australopithecus afarensis. These stones would have been helpful for processing grains, seeds, and nuts, turning them into flour. Kind of. If you've ever tried to grind something using a mortar and pestle, you know that it's not the easiest thing to do. But for our ancient friends, this was their reality. And the harder the food, the longer the process took. For example, crushing acorns takes about 15 minutes to do by hand. This is why our early ancestors likely chose to spend so much time perfecting the tools needed to complete this task. Another option our ancestors had to deal with tough food was to cook it. Cooking tenderizes meat, vegetables, and grains, making them easier to mash or pulverize. The downside is that our ancestors didn't have an unlimited supply of fire to cook their food. This led to the creation of another type of early kitchen tool, the pounder. Early humans likely used a large rock or a heavy piece of wood to smash smaller stones. These small stones would be used to crush and pulverize food. We don't know for sure what types of food our ancestors ate that required this type of processing, but it's a good bet that wild grains, roots, and nuts were common. There was also likely a social component to pounding grain. Just like modern cultures who often pound grain in large groups before ceremonies, early humans probably had similar traditions. The sound of pounding grain could be heard throughout the savannas of Africa as groups of early humans worked together, sharing food and stories. Early humans' need to deal with tough grains and nuts also led to the invention of mortar. A mortar is simply a bowl-shaped indentation carved into a hard surface. It makes the task of pounding grains and other tough foods much easier. When you think about it, mortar are kind of amazing. You're taking a hard rock or piece of wood and carving out a concave surface, essentially creating a hole for smashing stuff. Early humans likely started out by choosing natural rock formations that had mortar already formed into them. Eventually, they began carving their own mortar into solid pieces of rock. While the previous tools we've discussed could be used to cut, grind, and pound food, early humans still needed a way to mix ingredients and combine them into something palatable. Enter the first primitive mixing spoon. Archaeologists have discovered a number of bone fragments at various archaeological sites across the world that show clear signs of wear and tear. This wear pattern is consistent with the mixing of liquids and foods. Our ancestors didn't have any metal handy to create spoons with, so they likely used bones, specifically the femur, or thigh bone, as their utensil of choice. Femurs have a natural divot near one end that's perfect for scooping. The only downside is that, well, they're kind of hard to come by. Bones aren't exactly lying around waiting to be picked up and used, especially if your group has already eaten the animal it came from. But if a butchered carcass is available, then the femur is a great material to work with. Not only does it have a natural scoop at one end, but it's also smooth and tapered, making it easy to stir and mix. Archaeological evidence suggests that bone spoons were used across the world, including in France, China, and the United States. Some of these spoons date back as far as 1.4 million years. There's also some evidence that early humans used other animal bones as utensils, including the scapula or shoulder blade and the ulna or forearm bone. Animal bones were likely also used as spatulas for scraping and spreading, in addition to mixing and stirring. There were many different types of early humans across the world during the Paleolithic era, and each group likely used whatever materials were readily available to them. This isn't surprising when you consider the wide range of tools archaeologists have discovered. For example, in Kenya, early humans used hammerstones, which are smooth, rounded stones that can be used to crack nuts and crush other tough foods. In France, early humans were using sharp flakes of flint to cut meat and slice fruit. And in Spain, early humans used wooden hammers, which are just what they sound like, hammers made out of wood. One of the most important things to keep in mind while discussing early kitchen tools is that early humans weren't all living in the same place. At the same time, the earliest evidence of stone tools comes from about 2.6 million years ago in Africa. Meanwhile, the earliest evidence of grinding stones comes from 1.8 million years ago in India. It seems likely that different groups of early humans developed different tools depending on what they had available to them and what their particular needs were. After all, a group of early humans living in a mountainous region would have needed different tools than a group living in a rainforest. So what made stone tools so great? First off, they were super strong and durable. They could withstand the rigors of daily use, including smashing and scraping. Plus, they were reusable, unlike the fires that produced burnt rocks. And you could find them pretty much anywhere. All you needed was a rock and a little bit of know-how. Most importantly, stone tools were versatile. You could cut, grind, pound, mix, and scrape with them, meaning you didn't need a bunch of different tools for each task. If you're thinking that all of these early tools sound pretty primitive, you're not wrong. But don't forget that they represent the beginning of human culinary ingenuity. From the earliest cobbles to the first mortar, our ancestors were constantly coming up with new and innovative ways to deal with tough food. And that ingenuity didn't stop with the Paleolithic era. The next step up from stone tools would be metal tools, which allowed for even more precise and efficient cutting, grinding, and pounding. These tools would have been especially useful for dealing with tougher types of food, such as meat and shellfish. With the ability to cut meat into smaller pieces and grind grains into flour, early humans were able to expand their diet to include a wider variety of foods. This, in turn, provided them with a more diverse set of nutrients, which helped them stay healthy and survive in a variety of environments. So the next time you're in the kitchen, take a second to appreciate all of the tools that you have at your disposal. From the sharpest knife to the largest mixing bowl, each one of them represents thousands of years of human innovation. And it all started with a simple rock. Thanks for watching FoodSaga. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.